Notre Dame fell to Miami in the season opener, and the takes are flying in the aftermath. Some say the Irish are finished. Others think it's just a bump in the road. Today, we are sorting out the overreactions, underreactions, and some that are right on point.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. My name is Wojciak and I'm the host. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018. Now I'm a producer at Fox Sports. I've been covering the Irish since 2020. And today is Tuesday, September 2nd. And thanks for getting your day started right here by making this your first watch or listen of the day. This episode is presented by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. Before we dive in, I would like to ask for you to please take a second to subscribe on YouTube or follow along on your preferred podcast platform. It helps keep the show free and it ensures that you stay up to date with our daily coverage of Notre Dame football. All right, how was your Labor Day, everybody? I want to tell a quick story to kick things off here. I had to go into my job at Fox on Monday despite the holiday because we had to tape a show, and I got there around 7:30 in the morning. Needless to say, I was pretty tired and not in the best mood at that point in time, and literally my first interaction when I walked in the door was with a coworker who asked me, "Hey Tyler, did you catch the Notre Dame game last night?" Yes, I watched the game. So my day did not get off to the best start, but it did get better from there. And now here we are just a couple days removed from Notre Dame's loss to Miami. And I have seen all kinds of reactions. The goal of this show is to cut through that noise and figure out what we can really take away from that game. We're going to dig into what went wrong with the offense, why the defense is catching some heat, and most importantly, what this all means heading into a massive showdown against Texas A&M, not this upcoming Saturday, the following Saturday. And along the way, I'm going to go over some of the takes that I've seen or heard flying around and decide whether they're an overreaction, underreaction, or right on point. But big picture here, one thing that I've seen kind of floating around, some people arguing about it, is some people are saying Notre Dame is not a legitimate contender following the loss to Miami. Like, they might make the playoff, but they aren't going to be the team that a lot of us hoped and even expected that they would be going into the year. And to me, that's an overreaction. From my perspective, I think most rational Notre Dame fans that I have seen understand that the season is not over because they lost a game in the season opener. Now that we're a year into the expanded college football playoff, fans seem to understand that one loss is not going to ruin a season. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois last year and ended up making it to the national championship. And as I joked about yesterday, I may have said that the season was over in the immediate aftermath of that game. No one is doing that really after this game. But I have to say, it does feel a little weird how unfazed I was after a loss like that, but that's a good thing now. Losing a season opener on the road against a top 10 team with a quarterback who's making his first career start might be the most forgivable loss you could possibly imagine. And Marcus Freeman seemed to share that sentiment in his postgame. He did not seem rattled. He did not seem down in the dumps. As Pete Sampson from The Athletic mentioned, it did not feel like a referendum on the program. It was two good teams battling. One team ultimately had to lose, and Notre Dame ended up losing that game. And although I would agree that Notre Dame did not look like a national championship contender against Miami, they didn't even look like a playoff team until mid-October of last year, and that team ended up making it to the national championship. The team who won the national championship, Ohio State, got physically dominated by their arch rival at home in the last game of the regular season in November, and then they kind of dominated their way to a national championship. So this is college football. These are 19 to 23-year-olds, sometimes 24-year-old now in this day and age of college football, but losses happen, and I think Notre Dame lost to a good team. Notre Dame in September of 2024 compared to December and then January of 2025 were like two separate teams. That could absolutely happen with this year. And as a matter of fact, their performance in the season opener against Miami was actually pretty similar to the Texas A&M game last year, especially on offense. They had very similar yards per play, but the difference was Notre Dame lost their turnover battle 2-0 in this game, and last year they won their turnover battle 2-0 against Texas A&M. And sometimes football is a really simple game. Notre Dame and Miami had similar yardage on offense, similar penalties, similar third down efficiency, but one team turned the ball over twice, and they lost in the middle eight. That is a team who lost the game. That is the difference in that game. I feel like Miami is going to be in the college football playoff. I think Notre Dame is going to be in the college football playoff. So that one game does not change my expectations for the team and what they can accomplish this season. However, one take that I have seen going around that I actually think is not getting enough attention is that Notre Dame's leaders did not step up in this game. That is an underreaction. I think what Notre Dame's captains showed, or at least didn't show, was pretty alarming. Let's go through them. We'll start on offense. Emil Wagner. Probably the worst game of his career. And I understand he had a tough task going up against Ruben Bain. He looked like a first-round NFL draft pick, but it was just really rough for 59. He gave up a sack and 4 pressures. He was getting cooked by Bain at multiple points in this matchup. He got beat so bad on that last drive that he actually got completely turned around and looked like he was rushing the passer. It looked like he was trying to get after CJ Carr. So that cannot happen with any offensive lineman, let alone your captain, let alone a player who has the most snaps of anyone on the team last season, and he didn't really get much push in the run game either. Look, he's had some tough matchups in the past few games. I mean, you go back to the semifinal, he was going up against Abdul Carter at Penn State. Rough showing for him. I thought he played pretty well against Ohio State in the national championship, but then he had another big-time player to go up against in this game, and he didn't really play well. So probably the worst game of Emil Wagner's career. He's definitely going to have to bounce back after that. Billy Schrauth, we'll keep it on the offensive line. He was fine. Second highest graded lineman on Pro Football Focus. I think he did some good, but he has not been like the mauler that we've all expected him to be. He's got a ton of talent. We've talked about him a lot. I'm not saying he played bad, but at some point, he needs to be that dominant force on the offensive line, and in this game, he was not that player. Will Pauling, he was pretty invisible in this game. Pro Football Focus said he was out there for 21 snaps. That was way more than I thought, but it's not entirely his fault. The slot receivers were clearly not part of the game plan for whatever reason. We're going to talk more about the game plan here in segment 2. So it's not entirely his fault that he didn't make an impact on this game. It just didn't happen for him. He was out there for 21 snaps, didn't have a single target, didn't block particularly well. But if Notre Dame is going to try to give Carr more easy throws, you would think that a player like Will Pauling, who had over 70 receptions for Wisconsin a couple years ago, would be a nice little safety net, someone who could run short routes and get the ball and try to make some plays in space. That was not part of the game plan. And this one, I like seeing Faison get involved, but it feels like they could have designed some stuff for Pauling. So it didn't happen for him in this one. This is a surprise. We'll see if he's able to, be part of the game plan against Texas A&M. I would expect him to be that way. All right, now on defense, Donovan Heinisch. It was a bad game for 41. He had the second worst grade of any defensive player for Notre Dame, according to Pro Football Focus. And look, I understand that player grades on Pro Football Focus are not perfect, but I think that Heinisch's grade was pretty, it represented the eye test well because he was getting pushed off the line of scrimmage, and his best attribute is rushing the passer. He didn't register one pressure or quarterback hurry out there in 33 snaps. He had one single tackle. And look, we understand that he's undersized at defensive tackle, and it showed in this game. Greg McElroy kept showing him getting pushed back 5 yards, sometimes displaced 6 yards or like away from the line of scrimmage. It was just not a good game for Heinisch, and he's going to have to bounce back because this Notre Dame team needs him to step up, and he was not playing well in this game. And then at linebacker, Drake Bowen, kind of similar to Billy Schrauth. Not great, not bad. He was second on the team with 8 tackles, 2 solo. He missed 3 tackles according to Pro Football Focus, but something to keep in mind with the Mike linebackers. Like this was a situation for J.D. Bertrand as well. Like when they're in on every play, they're going to miss some tackles as well. So there's more on his plate right now for sure with the green dot, but I had really high expectations for him going into this season. After one game, he didn't live up to them, but he's still got plenty of time to build on this. I don't want to make it sound like I'm being super critical of Drake Bowen. It certainly was not his fault that Notre Dame did not win this game. But again, if you're a captain, the expectations for you are a little bit higher, and I don't think Drake Bowen met them in this game. And I could say the same thing about Adon Schuler in the back end. Obviously, he had the big mistake at the end of the first half. If he attacks the ball on that play, it's probably incomplete, and Miami ends up with a field goal going into the end of the first half instead of a touchdown. But watching it back, it's pretty clear he thinks he's going to pick off that ball and then return it for a big gain the opposite way. Instead, C.J. Daniels makes arguably the catch of the year, and it's a touchdown for Miami and ultimately ends up swinging the game because they get 14 points in the middle eight, although technically the second touchdown was a little outside the middle eight, but still, it was the first drive of the second half. Instead of it being a huge play for Schuler and Notre Dame, it's a critical touchdown for Miami, and I'm sure that Schuler's kicking himself watching that tape back because if he just blew up that wide receiver or just tried to knock the ball down, that ball is definitely incomplete. So If you're going to wait, you're probably going to make a mistake in that situation. You got to go up. You got to attack the ball. I think Schuler's going to do that going down the road. He had a couple missed tackles as well, which is a problem for him last year. I think he'll be able to get that cleaned up. But overall, it's on the captains to rally the troops and hold others accountable, but they're also going to have to look in the mirror and step up their game as individuals. Okay, another take that I would say is right on point. The season now hinges on how they respond against Texas A&M. I don't want to say if they lose to Texas A&M, the season is over because, again, Ohio State just won a national championship with 2 losses in the regular season, but this is a huge game. I wish, and I'm sure the team wishes, that they could go out and play someone on Saturday, cleanse the palate, beat up on an inferior opponent, but they're going to have to wait a week, and they're going to have to go up against another really good team the next time they take the field. If they are able to go out and get a win against a good SEC team at home, I think the loss to Miami will ultimately be forgotten because the team will have bounced back strong, and the schedule eases up a little bit after that, and they're going to have a lot more runway to figure out some of the other mistakes that they experienced in this game, and some that they're definitely going to experience in that game against Texas A&M because it's still early on in the season. Team is still kind of figuring itself out like any other team in college football is in early September, but it will give this team the confidence they need to run the table and achieve everything they set out to achieve before the season if they're able to bounce back, respond well, play with violence, play with tenacity, play with their hair on fire, and just be the aggressive team in this one. Miami was the aggressor in the season opener. Notre Dame was playing on their heels a little bit in the first half. When they finally started to press the issue in the second half, it was too little, too late because they got down big early. So they need to come out. They need to respond right away against Texas A&M. And if they were to lose that game, the season might not be over, but the tension around this team will be ramped up to the extreme. So they really have to come out. They got to get that win against Texas A&M. Doesn't matter how. Doesn't have to be pretty. They just have to get the win, and that will be huge for this team going forward. All right, we've talked about the big picture fallout, but let's zero in on the offense because there are some takes flying around about C.J. Carr, the offensive line, and Mike Denbrock's play calling that we need to address. It's coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Today's episode is also brought to you by Rugiet. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it is time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. We talked about it extensively on the Instant Reaction show yesterday, and I saw a lot more people criticize Mike Denbrock's play calling in the past day. So the offensive play calling under Mike Denbrock was considered stale, and I believe that is right on point. There was clearly an emphasis early on to have C.J. Carr make some easy throws and get in rhythm. That worked for the most part. I liked what they were doing early on, especially in the first drive of the game, getting those jitters out, get him into a rhythm so that he could potentially make some bigger throws down the road later on in the game. But then Denbrock just kept going to that the rest of the game, and it hurt the team. C.J. Carr attempted 30 passes in this game. 11 of those 30 were screen plays. He threw 9 passes behind the line of scrimmage and 13 passes under 10 yards. He finished with 6 total passes beyond 10 yards or more. Nobody, and I mean nobody, expected him to let Carr air it out all game and start chucking deep balls all over the place. That would not have been a recipe for success. But if his best attribute is pushing the ball down the field, then push the ball down the field at least a little bit and test the Miami safeties. He went 4 of 6, throwing beyond 10 yards for 118 yards and a touchdown. So going forward, now that he's got his first game under his belt, I hope that Mike Denbrock is more willing to push the ball downfield a little bit with CJ Carr, because defenses are going to start playing up close to the line. I mean, by the end of the game, Miami's cornerbacks were reading those screenplays and they jumped it. Like, that's what led to the interception. Yeah, CJ Carr should not have thrown that pass. I agree. He should have, handed it off to Jeremiah Love. And as soon as he turned and saw that defender there, he should have just thrown the ball right in the dirt, but he throws it up. Miami ends up getting this kicked ball interception. That was an insane play, one of the many big plays that they had in this game where they just kind of had a break go their way. But if you keep doing that, you're not going to have an exciting offense. You're not going to really test the defense. And the biggest play that they had was a bust in coverage. Like, Eli Raridan was wide open and started racing down the sidelines because Miami clearly wasn't in the right place. When CJ Carr threw it up to Malachi Fields down the field, he made a great catch on the ball. That is why they went out and got Malachi Fields in the transfer portal. But you can't utilize your playmakers if you're just throwing it behind the line of scrimmage every single play. And look, sometimes it worked. Like, Jordan Faison was getting shifty early on in the game, so I'm not saying get rid of it entirely. There was even a third down play where they ran a tight end tunnel screen to Eli Raridan, and CJ Carr just missed the throw, but it was actually there. So I don't mind running screenplays sometimes, but when you're building your offense around horizontal passes, it's not going to work. The defense is going to figure that out quickly, and that's what Miami did in this game. Beyond just the horizontal passing, though, we got to talk about Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, or the lack thereof, in this game. They combined for 16 carries for 78 yards. Price did not get a single carry in the second half, despite averaging 7.5 yards per carry on the 6 carries he got in the second quarter. He set up that first touchdown drive when CJ Carr made that unbelievable play when he escaped the pressure and then found Micah Gilbert in the end zone on that no-look throw. Part of this is on CJ Carr. He decided to keep the ball on a lot of RPOs, and he threw the screens. But part of this is on the coaching staff as well, because if you're giving Carr the option to not give Love or Price a ball, then sometimes he's going to do it. You have to force the issue when you have a player as good as Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. So whether he got the ball or whenever he got the ball, good things seem to happen. And at worst, he was gaining 3 yards, even if he was getting stuffed because he's so shifty and he's able to shed tacklers. And I have a feeling that they're going to overcorrect this, or at least I'm hoping that they overcorrect this and run the ball a lot with Love and a lot with Price, and not run quarterback power with CJ Carr when they're at the goal line. It worked out when they ran the draw, but I think he was getting too cute in those situations. It's not the same 13 as last year, and even though we scored on the draw, you can't be running quarterback power with CJ Carr that often. It's okay as like a change of pacing every once in a while, but you have 2 of the best running backs in the entire country. Give them the ball and let them cook. So, didn't love the play calling live. After the rewatch, I still didn't like it. I hope that gets fixed in a hurry. Another big topic of conversation over the last 2 days is Notre Dame's offensive line. And I've seen a lot of people say that the offensive line is overrated and they are going to hold this team back. And I think that is a bit of an overreaction. They absolutely got beat in this game. There is no doubt about that. But I don't think they're going to see another defensive line like that for the rest of the regular season. Now, if you want to say that they're overrated relative to preseason expectations, I won't argue with that. If you thought they were going to be one of, if not the best offensive lines in the country, they certainly didn't look like it in this game. They were not even the best offensive line on the field. But even good offensive lines can get beat early on in the season. Notre Dame won the Joe Moore Award in 2017. In the second game of the 2017 season, they finished with 55 rushing yards against Georgia. Now, is this Miami defense as good as Georgia 2017? Probably not. But their defensive line is something serious over there. Ruben Bain is an absolute menace. I was concerned about him going into the game, and he played even better than I expected. He is absolutely going to be a first-round draft pick in April. Akeem Messidor might not go as high in the NFL draft, but that dude is a beast in college, and he's going to dominate a lot more offensive lines this season. And then on their interior, they've got Ahmad Moten, Justin Scott, and David Blay. Like, that's a strong rotation there between those 3 guys, and Notre Dame clearly missed Charles Jagasaw more than we expected, and he cannot get back soon enough. Meanwhile, Anthony Knapp was fighting for his life at left tackle in this game. There was a point during the broadcast when Molly McGrath said that Anthony Knapp was on the sideline with an ice pack on his head, another one on his neck, and he was eating a popsicle. It's a shame that we didn't get a camera on that moment because that would have been a pretty funny visual, but I feel for him, man. He's a big guy, and the humidity was definitely a factor in this game. Even though it gets hot in South Bend and it can get humid, there's something else about that South Florida heat, especially after a thunderstorm, which there's a big thunderstorm in the afternoon in Miami Gardens. So, yeah, his conditioning wasn't up to snuff. It's the first game of the season, his worst game of Anthony Knapp's career. I think he's going to bounce back from it. But it was a disappointing start for the offensive line, for sure. We've already talked about Wagner. Knapp wasn't very good. I thought Ashton Craig played pretty well at center in his first game back, so that's encouraging. But the right guard, it seems like they're still trying to figure out whether they want to go with Kirby Lambert or Sullivan Absher. So this offensive line is not clicking right out of the gate, but sometimes that happens. I feel very confident this group is going to improve as the year goes on, but they're going to have to improve a lot in a hurry because even though Texas A&M doesn't have the 3 NFL draft picks that were on the team last year, it's a damn good defense, and they're going to have to be ready to go to take on the Aggies. But I think long-term, the offensive line is going to be just fine. All right, let's talk about CJ Carr. I've seen a lot of people say he was the right choice at quarterback. I think that's actually an underreaction. I felt like CJ Carr performed well in the moment as I was watching that game, but after watching it again, I came away even more impressed with CJ Carr. His stat line isn't going to blow you away. 19 of 30, 221 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and a bad interception. He made some mistakes. He missed Eli Raridan on that third down throw I was talking about earlier. Should not have thrown that ball at all on the interception, and he had a couple bad passes. But when you consider the circumstances and when you consider the environment, I think he looked mature beyond his years, and he is just a playmaker, man. Like that play where he was running around and then he no-looks it to Mikey Gilbert in the end zone. When was the last time you saw a Notre Dame quarterback make a play like that? Ian Book in 2020 when he was in his prime and he kind of looked like Johnny Football out there. So what CJ Carr can do long-term is so exciting. I did not love the quarterback power calls to him, but he can also move around. I thought he showed some mobility, and that was just something that we had not been able to see because he's wearing a red jersey in practice. He was wearing a red jersey in the spring game, but he can move, man, and that's going to be an asset. He can scramble. He can run the ball a little bit on the design runs like that quarterback draw, and he's got some serious arm talent. That throw to Malachi Fields was a great throw. He threw some really tight spirals in this game. But more than anything, more than his arm talent, more than his running ability, his poise and maturity in the second half of this one was really impressive. A lot of young quarterbacks could have folded under the pressure of going down double digits on the road against a good team, but he kept coming back. He took some big hits in this game, and he kept getting up, and I think he's got what it takes to become a great quarterback eventually. It actually reminded me of a situation last year when Notre Dame was kind of moving the ball late on Penn State. They showed Drew Aller on the sideline, and he was freaking out at the defense because they couldn't get a stop on like 3rd and short or 4th and short when Notre Dame would just give the ball to Riley Leonard, and he could feel that game slipping through his grasp. Well, meanwhile, when Miami was driving late and Notre Dame was trying to get a stop before they ended up kicking the game-winning field goal, CJ Carr had a very cool, calm, collected demeanor on the sideline, and even though it didn't work out for him on the last drive, I don't put that on him. Notre Dame had their backup left tackle in, and Emil Wagner was getting cooked, so he never even had a chance to really throw it on that last drive, but I loved his maturity. I loved the way he owned it after the game was over, wore the responsibility himself, understands that he needs to get better, and I have confidence that he will be better and end up being a really, really good quarterback for this Notre Dame team. So the offense might have its share of issues, but the defense might actually be the bigger story from this game. Let's get into the hot takes on Chris Ash's debut and whether this unit is really as shaky as it looked. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you are ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I personally love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. You've got player props. You could build a same-game parlay. You could even jump in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays. All right, here's my pick. Did you know the Detroit Lions are minus 170 to make the playoffs? This is a team that went 15-2. last season. I understand they lost their coordinators. They lost some key people on their staff, but this is still a damn good football team. They get Aiden Hutchinson back, who's going to be the defensive player of the year before he got hurt last year. So I have a ton of confidence that the Detroit Lions will make it back to the playoffs. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and I could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's where I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It is the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. I love zone deals too. Just pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Hey, Locked On Irish fans, we have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to LockedOnPodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's LockedOnPodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show description. All right, so here's something I did not expect to see after Notre Dame's first game. I saw some people saying that Notre Dame's defense is flat out bad. Right. It's not that they're not great or not good. It's they're flat out bad. And I think that is absolutely an overreaction. Did they underperform relative to expectations? Yes, but they were not terrible. On paper, it was actually a pretty solid performance. They only gave up 5.1 yards per play. Carson Beck finished with just a hair over 200 passing yards, and they only ran the ball for 3.4 yards per carry, which is actually less than what Notre Dame averaged per carry. The first two touchdown passes by Miami were just awesome plays. Carson Beck delivered a dime on the first touchdown, rolling to his left, finding Malachi Toney downfield. It was a great throw, great catch. And then C.J. Daniels made the catch of the year on the second one. For all the talk about how Carson Beck wasn't good under pressure, he was getting wrapped up as he was throwing that ball, just kind of flung it up in the air. Honestly, it could have been picked, maybe even should have been picked. Then C.J. Daniels goes out there, makes a ridiculous one-handed catch in between two Notre Dame defenders after he had beat Leonard Moore on a double move. You have that play 10 times. C.J. Daniels makes that catch once, and he did it in this game against Notre Dame, and ultimately it ended up being a huge reason why they ended up winning that game. But the first drive out of the second half was inexcusable for Notre Dame. Miami took it to them. They ran the ball right down their throats, and they went up 21-7 when Notre Dame absolutely needed to stop in that scenario. But after that drive, Notre Dame's defense clamped down, and they kind of shut Miami down. Let's go through their possessions after that drive. They went 3 and out, 4 plays, kicked a field goal after an interception when they got the ball with great field possession, and then another 3 and out. But Notre Dame's defense did not come up with the big stop at the end. Notre Dame ties the game at 24. Miami got the ball back at their own 35 with 3:21 left in the game, and they took 10 plays to go 46 yards, and they ended up kicking the game-winning field goal, which was partially aided by a pass interference penalty on Christian Gray. So, was the defense, the reason that they lost? I think there's a bunch of reasons why they lost. Main thing is Notre Dame's offense had 2 turnovers, and their defense was not able to get any that helped their offense out. Does the defense need to get better? Absolutely. But sometimes the other team makes great plays too, and I think that's what happened in this one. I'm not sure if Miami is like a legit national championship contender, but they're not a bad team because bad teams don't have players like C.J. Daniels and Malachi Toney who can make plays like that, and a quarterback in Carson Beck who is now 25-3 as a starter. So the defense was disappointing in this one. I expected a little bit more, especially on the defensive line. We'll talk more about them in a second, but I think there's a lot of things from this game where you can say, okay, they're going to clean that up. Boubacar Traore looks like a legit stud. KVA played really well. I think he's going to play a lot more in the future because Notre Dame's defense was out there for 70 snaps. KVA was out there for 36. He was probably the best player on Notre Dame's defense in this game, so he's going to need to see more playing time. Jaden Osbury played pretty well. And I think that this defense still has some dudes. Leonard Moore had some great coverage plays as well, even though he got beat on a couple underneath routes on that double move. But it was a good offense. They were the number one offense in the country last year. They scored 24 points on Notre Dame. The only other time Notre Dame allowed 24 points or more last season was against Ohio State in the national championship. So a lot they need to clean up, but I don't think they're bad. I just think they went up against a really good offense in this game, and they got the better of them. All right, next up, we'll keep it on the defense. Chris Ash's scheme looks more conservative than Al Golden's, and it cost them. I think that take is spot on. This was the most frustrating part of the game, in my opinion, at least defensively. Outside of the play calling on offense, I think that was the most frustrating part for most fans out there. But watching the defense and watching some of the decisions that Chris Ash made were also very frustrating. Going into this game, the biggest key for Notre Dame on defense, at least what we talked about on this show, and I'm sure a lot of other podcasts were saying the same thing, they had to get pressure on Carson Beck, and they did not do that whatsoever. This is from Dalton Wasserman at Pro Football Focus. Notre Dame pressured Carson Beck just 4 times. The last time Notre Dame had fewer pressures than that in a game was Week 12 of 2017. That game was against Navy, who dropped back to pass 9 times the entire game. So that's not great, Bob. And going from watching an Al Golden-led defense for 3 years to what Chris Ash called against Miami was like skydiving over the Grand Canyon and then immediately sitting through a PowerPoint about quarterly sales projections and increasing shareholder value. Total whiplash, okay? And that is not what we expected from Chris Ash. He was brought in to be aggressive. He was considered a guy who liked to blitz a lot, and Notre Dame barely blitzed in this game. And I understand Miami's wide receivers are making some plays, but they were dropping 7, and they were just not getting pressure with 4. Marcus Freeman said after the game, they counted on their guys to do it, and they weren't doing it. So at a certain point, you can't be stubborn. You got to bring some guys in. You got to rush 5. You got to rush 6. And yes, it puts your secondary in compromising situations sometimes, but you got to have faith in Gray. You got to have faith in Moore and Schuler and Stroman, who I thought played well in this game, to lock down their mans and get after the quarterback because they just couldn't do it with 4 guys. It did not happen all game. And look, Miami has 2 NFL draft picks at tackle. They have a really good offensive line. Mario Cristobal is an offensive line guy. He's an offensive lineman's offensive lineman. He preaches offensive line as much, if not more, than Marcus Freeman. And he had his offensive line ready to go, and they were giving it to Notre Dame's defensive line. But Notre Dame had to start bringing more, especially like on 3rd and longs. They need to bring more exotic blitzes. They had to be more aggressive. I mean, they've got Jalen Snead at linebacker, who is awesome at getting after the passer. And we had heard all offseason about how Jalen Snead had made all these strides and he's more complete linebacker, but his best attribute is getting after the passer. When did you see Jalen Snead being utilized getting after the passer? This is not a criticism of Snead. It's a criticism of how he was used in this game. So I don't think they used their defense and their personnel the best that they possibly could to cause issues for Carson Beck, and I think it cost them. Even though the defense came up with some big stops late in the game, they needed to create some havoc plays, needed to create some turnovers, and they just weren't able to do it because they weren't able to get any pressure on Carson Beck. And even though Miami didn't run the ball for a ton of yards, Notre Dame just did not have enough negative plays. They had 2 total tackles for loss, 1 sack. Boubacar Traore made a great play on the sack, and even on one of those tackles for loss, the Miami running back just slipped in the backfield. So disappointing performance overall by the defense and the fact that they just were not able to apply enough pressure on Carson Beck and really the offense as a whole. But a big reason why they were not able to apply that pressure is because of their defensive line. So the last take I want to address on today's show is Notre Dame's interior defensive line is a question mark. I think that's an underreaction. I think it's a bigger concern than we thought it was. Personnel-wise, this was the most alarming part of the defense's performance. Is part of that has to do with my concern about the defensive tackles going into the season. And I understand that Marcus Freeman praised his interior a lot during camp, said they had the most growth of any position, but they certainly did not play like that against Miami. I think Marcus Freeman was saying that to try to build their confidence, but man, it did not come through in this game at all, and I'm worried about that unit. We've talked about Heinisch already. We don't need to stay on that topic anymore. I don't think Jason Onye was much better in this game. Gabriel Rubio was fine. I actually thought Jared Dawson played the best of any of those guys, but he wasn't perfect either, and late in the game, Notre Dame went with Elijah Hughes, who had not played at all up to that point. I just don't think they felt confident about any of the guys that they had been putting out there, and you just cannot win a national championship without being stout up the middle. Notre Dame was not good enough up the middle in this one. It could get better, but it's very concerning to me because I was already concerned about this group going into the season, and they did not do anything to instill much confidence going forward. They got better as the game went on. They have really good linebackers behind them and a really good secondary, but man, Texas A&M is going to try to run the ball between the tackles a lot, so we're going to find out what this interior is made of on September 13th, I think it is, when Notre Dame hosts Texas A&M. But between the overreactions, the underreactions, and what feels spot on about this team after that game, the real question now is how Notre Dame bounces back. Texas A&M is looming, and it could define the season depending on how that game goes. All right, that's going to do it for me today. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first watch or listen of the day. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to hit subscribe on YouTube, leave a like, leave a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps more Notre Dame fans find the show. I'm going to be back here tomorrow morning with Luke Smith to get his boots on the ground report from Miami. Plus, we're going to go over the 3 things we liked and 3 things we didn't like from the Irish in the opener. And we've also got some exciting news to share on the way out. Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 hosts alongside 2-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. It is a college football preview that only Locked On can do, and you can catch the College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.